This computer. All right, hello everyone. Welcome back. It is very, very nice to have you all here today. Today is a very special day. Not because we have a very special speaker, but we have a very special speaker all the time, right? But it's a very special day because this is Zap Conservationists in Action's third birthday. Yay! I was told by a early childhood development specialist that age 3 is the hardest. So let's hope not. Let's hope it's very awesome and easy. So I don't have kids, so I don't know, but hopefully year 3 is fantastic and everything. So welcome everybody. We're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month 2025. Let's get right into it. First and foremost, let me introduce myself. We haven't had the pleasure to meet. My name is Em. Very nice to meet you.
And my name is Janae. Hello, everybody. Thank you.
Hello.
Glad you're all here with us today.
And right now we're gonna go over some expectations. Then I'm gonna introduce Javier, who we'll go into the specifics there in a little bit, and then we'll have time for questions and discussions at the end or throughout as well. So please feel free to explore the chat and everything like that. As you're familiar, feel free to familiar with Zoom. Feel free to turn on the closed captionings if you want, or share your video. We love seeing your beautiful faces. If you don't want to, though, not a problem. Likewise, feel free to comment or speak up if you have any questions or comments or anything like that. Just make sure we keep it respectful here and at good times. Likewise, if you really like something, but you just want to drop like a little emoji or something like that, we love seeing those. So please feel free to drop thumbs up, hearts, whatever it is you like. Awesome. Now I'm gonna go over some rules, but I'm gonna do these real quick. All right. So first here, we're here to be present, here to stay engaged. We're here to listen with respect. Please. We gotta represent that recognize that your ideas represent your own unique perspective. We seek first to understand, then to be understood. We expect and accept non-closure. My favorite is that we say the thing, we ask the question. And the last one is that this session is intended to inspire and spark curiosity and inquiry. Why are you smiling at me?
Janae's favorite.
It's Janae's favorite, if that's relevant information to you all. So cool. Now let's go over to the most important slide of the day. First and foremost, Javier is joining us representing their own unique perspectives, stories, and experiences. They may not necessarily reflect the beliefs of Brookfield Zoo Chicago. One important thing I want to share all is that this is the insight about an individual, not a community. So we cannot for a second pretend that this 1 hour celebration represents the entire image of what it's like to be a Hispanic conservationist, a Latino conservationist, Latina conservationists. We can't do that in 1 hour. That takes lifetimes. And on top of lifetimes, it takes so much historical context onto these lifetimes. So we don't pretend to encompass that image in this 1 hour. Likewise, today you'll be hearing terms such as Hispanic, Latino, Latina, right? You'll hear these terms today, though they may sound a little bit interchangeable. We recognize that they absolutely are not, that there's a lot of history to those words as well. I'd also like to invite Javier today to say anything that it may be relevant to this slide. Is there anything you think should be added right now, Javier?
No, I think you've covered it.
Thank you very much. Now that is all for me today. I'd like to welcome you all to Xavier Cortada. Very, very nice to have you here, Javier. I am handing you the remote control. You should be able to move my slides whenever you'd like. Go ahead and give it a click.
Let's see. I guess it's by clicking. No.
There we go.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Take it away. Thanks for being here with us.
Great. Sure. So I am excited to celebrate Nuestra Herencia, Hispanic Heritage Month. And I think I'd like to start by talking about that all of us share the same nucleotides. In our DNA, right? Adenine and thymine and guanine and cytosine make up the DNA strands of who we are, from our maternal ancestors, mom, maternal grandparents, great-grandparents, dad, maternal grandparents. But the most awesome thing about celebrating our herencia is that it is a family that goes beyond our immediate nuclear family, goes beyond our race, goes beyond our hemisphere, it goes beyond our species. Those 4 little nucleotides that code for amino acids in a polypeptide chain that creates proteins that fold in a certain way, that create the enzymes that tell our bodies how to make muscle, how to make hair, how to make neurons. Those little nucleic acids, the building blocks of life itself, those little four guys found inside you from Puerto Rico, you from Santo Domingo, you from Cuba, you from Mexico, you from Chicago, you from Miami. Those four little nucleotides make up life for everything that lives on planet Earth. And by everything, I mean from an apple, right, to a orangutan. And it makes up life, not just of everything living, but of everything that lives or has ever lived on planet Earth. So when I want to celebrate nuestra herencia, when I want to celebrate nuestra cultura, when I want to celebrate Hispanic heritage, I want to celebrate life. I want to celebrate the fact that we are part of this beautiful life across this planet, and that zoos like Brookfield, what they try to do is not just bring family together so that they can connect with one another, not just try to do outreach in a community or a barrio, right, to make us understand the importance, but it's about connecting us to the savannas of Africa. It's about connecting us to the deepest coral reefs in the right off Australia. It's about connecting us to everything that lives on this planet, so that we realize that our legacy isn't just to our children or to the nation that we love or to the nation that our ancestors came from or where some of our families still live, but it's to everything that lives. And that's the right way to celebrate Hispanic heritage. And that's why I'm so proud to be here with you. I was told that for Hispanic Heritage Month, you were wanting to profile some of your speakers, right? Some of the people, what they do and what their life journey was. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to start telling you about me. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I became an artist. And I'm going to tell you about the kind of art I do. And then I'm going to end with something connected to what the zoo does, right? A participatory art project that's connected to conservation. So I'm trying to thread that needle. I know that there's a process here. Normally, if I was with you in Chicago right now, I would start by asking you all your names and figuring out who you are and like knowing who my audience is. This feels a little weird. I'm, speaking into my computer, so I can't shake your hand. I can't get to figure out who you are. So please forgive our distance. I also know that there's probably going to Q&A in the end, but even that will be moderated. I don't think we're going to be in an open chat, so I'll be listening to those questions. But the very last slide will have my foundation's website and a email address, so you can connect with us if there's any questions that were outstanding. All right, so let's get started. So this is the Cortada family. I am the proud son of Cuban refugees who left Cuba as teenagers. They met in Miami in 1962. And I was born up in Albany, New York in 1964. So I'm an old man. I just celebrated my 61st birthday 2 days ago.
Oh, happy
But over
birthday.
here you have me with a bunch of candles, right? With a bunch of candles as a little boy in Albany, and then growing up with my family here in Miami, and our family doing the best they could, right, to make a new life in a place that was unknown to them. They were political refugees. They left a repressive government, an authoritarian government of Fidel Castro in Cuba back in 1960. 62 is when they left, but that regime happened in 1959. But when they came to the United States, again, they were young people. They had no idea that they were going to stay here for a lifetime. They thought it was a temporary thing. And what happened in those very, very young years is that my uncle, the guy on the upper right holding me with a little bottle and my little baby brother in diapers, that guy, Eddie Cortada, and my father with the 1970s tie next to the lady with the necklace who is my mom, the white necklace, he, Carlos Cortada, they were both artists. And you can see in our home some of the paintings that they would make in the background. And using art, these young refugees who obviously worked really hard, built community together, like you can see that we were as a family trying to, integrate and be part of American society, what they found as a way of connecting with one another was art. My dad and my uncle opened up a gallery called Galeria Cuadro. And in that gallery, they would have exhibits about Cuba, about la nostalgia, what they missed, from their homeland. This was in the 70s. These guys had been here for less than a decade. And what that gallery did wasn't sell paintings. In fact, they kind of went broke and had to close the gallery down. But what they did is they built community because people would come around to create poetry and to write about the exile experience and the diaspora. I know that Chicago, a lot of our brothers and sisters in Chicago right now are feeling a lot of pain and a lot of fear because of ICE. Something that, in my personal opinion, not the Sue's opinion, but I, as an artist who is connected with the Sue for the first time, feel that it is an affront to our community, an affront to our Constitution, an affront to our society. Just like my parents were foreigners, those who are immigrants who come to the US today weren't welcomed the way that my parents are welcomed. They were welcomed with open arms. All of American society tried their best to integrate us, to school us, to make us feel part of the American tapestry and the American dream. And it is because of that that my family was able to thrive and succeed, that my mom was a kindergarten teacher, that my dad became a social worker, that my dad helped government, the state of Florida, help with foster kids, help our society better integrate themselves, because they believe that our future is all about what they talked about in that little gallery, which is all of us back then trying to build community, trying to build a Miami, trying to build a society where each other's fate was interdependent with our very own. And art allowed us to see beyond ourselves. Art allowed us to imagine a different reality. Art also allowed them to deal and cope with the struggles and the despair of displacement, of being alone. And art did several other things along the way too, including help talk about the importance of civil society and the importance of culture. I didn't follow their footsteps. I actually went to law school at the University of Miami. I studied sciences early on as a young undergrad. I wanted to be a doctor. And I did so because in high school, I lived in Miami, which was the murder capital of the world back then because of the drug wars that we had. The murder capital of the US, I don't think it was the world, of the US. And we had shootings all the time. And I was literally in 1980, 81, and 82, those of you who are a little bit older may remember that Miami looked a little bit like the Scarface movie, right? Miami had drug wars, it had race riots, it had a lot of chaos happening. And as a high school student, I decided to lean in, to try to do something to help my community. And part of that was working at a hospital where I saw a lot of these gunshot wounds and a lot of the violence, present itself to me. So as a young boy, I decided that my job was not to run away, but to lean in. And in many ways, those two building blocks, right? My parents' connection to community with the arts through the church, and definitely with their public service jobs. And then me seeing chaos and violence and trying to lean in instead of leaning out. I think helped create that formation that was ripe for an interdisciplinary degree. When I got to the University of Miami, I studied sciences, then I studied business, and I studied law. While I was in law school, I started a drug rehab center. My first job out of law school was as director of juvenile violence and delinquency prevention programs at the University of Miami Department of Psychiatry. Because of all of this experience, I was a chair of the youth gang task force here in Miami. So this was a young Xavier, loving art. My law school books are full of doodles, but there was always this purpose, right, to try to make our society better and stronger. And when I got to Africa through the United States Embassy as a guest speaker to help teach other trainers about what we had learned at the University of Miami with my professorship what I had learned as the executive director of a drug rehab center. When I got to Africa, I found myself in a completely different milieu. I found myself at a place where I was free to think differently. I was there painting with baboons in the middle of the Masai Mara in East Africa. I was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. I was just enjoying a moment of respite. But importantly, through some interactions I had with these guest speaker programs where I was talking with drug addicted kids in Soweto, South Africa, a few months after apartheid had ended, that I began to see that little gift that my parents taught me, that little gallery where the pain was expressed, was conveyed, was channeled through art, where we could use art to connect with one another, was something that I was able to do. So throughout my 3-month period, I would go to Mauritius, I would go to South Africa, to Tanzania, to Kenya, to Sierra Leone, and I began giving speeches that were more about art than they were about gangs and violence. And I started seeing myself transform into not a professor who used art as a teaching tool and visual aid, but as an artist who used the power, the universal language of art, the elasticity of art to try to solve problems. So coming back to the US, that created a brand new campaign where I started using my art to create murals about important issues. So the bottom left mural, I was invited to the International AIDS Conference in Geneva in 1998 to capture the stories, the messages of AIDS patients from the global South, from Paraguay, from Brazil, from Uganda, from people all over the earth who would come to this conference and talk about the disparities, about how people who lived in the global North, in Europe and the US, were able to have the kind of healthcare that would get them medicines that would help them survive HIV/AIDS, whereas those who lived in the global South got a death sentence with the infection. So all of a sudden, art became this platform to communicate really important ideas. To the right, at the facade of our juvenile courthouse, I created a mural to celebrate or to commemorate the 100th anniversary of juvenile courts. Back in 1999, it was 100 years of treating children as children. So courts weren't supposed to be punitive. Courts were supposed to be about helping kids become stronger versions of themselves. So what I did is I went to every foster care program, every dependency program, residential program in my community, in Miami-Dade County, and to all the level 8, the higher end juvenile delinquency detention centers. And I asked those kids to write messages too that we also conveyed. So all of a sudden, the art became a platform to amplify people's voices, particularly those at society's margins, as a way of communicating and connecting with one another so that we could all better understand each other. And of course, these murals draw from this important tradition of our Mexican muralists. I remember my dad telling me about the great Mexican muralists, right? Telling me about how they used the power of art to communicate social justice ideas, right? During the earlier part of the last century. I'm talking about Siqueiros. I'm talking about Orozco. I'm talking about Diego Rivera's, right? During Hispanic Heritage Months, you'll see murals all over Chicago honoring these great giants. And you can see that that legacy isn't just in the nucleotides that Diego Rivera and I had, but it's also in how their work helped change and help transform this particular lawyer, professor turned artist to use that very medium to create art, to speak about AIDS, to speak about juveniles in foster care, and on the upper left to children in adult prison who were direct filed as adults. So these are the forms that I, as a young man, began using artistic expression. And before you knew it, I wasn't just inside a jail with children conceptualizing art. I was also in the steps of the Capitol with kids who were part of MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving campaigns, helping have youth convey to other youth the importance of not drinking and driving. The idea of using art here with hundreds of kids at the steps of the Capitol, trying to communicate to the rest of America those issues. At my city hall in the lower left, I am unveiling the murals that 20 years ago this year, we unveiled at City Hall. At the entrance of the chambers of my city are two murals that talk about the multicultural origins of this city. And in Philly, in northern Philly, I remember that for Mother's Day, they wanted me to come and help console some mothers because the gang violence in Philly had Dominican and Puerto Rican kids shooting one another. So I went there on Mother's Day and decided to create a mural called Hasta Cuando. So it was a way of working with those communities to use the power of art, to use these murals, to create this sickly, disturbing Mother's Day card on Mother's Day of 1996, saying how much longer over the stupidity of drugs are we going to be killing our children? So that's the power. That's the power of art. And that's why I decided, with all the degrees and all the credentials that I had, to pivot and use the power of art to help transform my world. In 98, just a few years after that, I wanted to explore a little bit of my experience. And for those of us celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, there's a lot to be proud of, but there's also a lot of tension, let's just call it. In the center, you have this piece called Red, White, and Babalu. And Red, White, and Babalu is just a reference to my high school experience where, I was Cuban, I was dancing, to the rhythm of my Cuban roots, but I'm clearly an American born, American raised, American pop culture, loving Led Zeppelin, kind of guy, right? As a high school kid. So it was like this, sort of beating to the different beats of two different cultures. And that for some can be a little challenging because if your family has not assimilated at the same rate that you have, if you go to school and you learn how to speak English, but abuelita does not, and especially in communities where most of people, like parts of Miami, are monolinguistic, then it creates a certain tension. It also makes you an adult real quick. You're the one reading all the letters from government and helping translate, for your family as a young boy. But that kind of tension, that kind of sort of tension is a happy tension, right? Because it puts you in a leadership role. It allows you to express and to lead, but it also connects you with your community. The painting on the left is a different kind of tension. When my father got here, it was, 1962. We had yet to do the Civil Rights Act. We still had discrimination express itself in the most horrible and vile ways, especially to our African-American brothers and sisters. Back then, sickly, you would have placards all over the stores that would say no blacks and no dogs allowed, as a disparaging way, right, of hurting the fellow citizens, the same citizens who I painted on the murals at City Hall, because without the African Americans who lived in Miami in 1896, this city would have never been incorporated. But those very descendants of those people who voted to create the city of Miami are being told in downtown stores in the 50s, don't come in, you're like a dog, you're not welcome here. That's the ugly stain of racism in America. Well, when my parents got here, I told you the story about broadly how America welcomed them with open arms, right? Giving them food stamps, giving them housing, helping them assimilate into this American tapestry. But there were also portions of America that weren't so welcoming. And my dad recounts having the signs up and down downtown Miami say, no blacks, no Cubans, and no dogs. And as an artist, I try to bring the truth to light. And I can't sit here and celebrate all the happy things about our food and our culture and our art and not talk about the reality of what's also happening. It is Hispanic Heritage Month. It's a proud heritage, a proud heritage of this particular group of humans that are a particular geography of planet Earth in a particular environment and the kind of culture and civilization that was built and continues to be built to the day. But that has come with some struggles. And I am ever cognizant of the struggles that are happening today, in the streets, of Chicago with ICE, that are happening today in the halls of Congress, and that are happening today through the politics of this nation. So part of Hispanic heritage is not just to be proud, but also to be empathetic. And one thing I have learned along the way is that just because you made it doesn't mean that everything is fine. There's this sense that, I got here and the rest of the Cubans who come, well, they're on their own. The truth is that mentality, right, that we are Americans or we came here first is like an absurdity. An absurdity if we came here first. If what we value is the contributions of the civilization, then what you should do is have new sentiments, have new perspectives, have new ideas infuse and make you stronger. The piece on the right is called Cubaba. When I was in college, some people couldn't pronounce my last name. Super easy. So I became like this caricature trying to fit in, right? I had a Mexican sombrero, even though I'm Cuban. I'm here drinking my beer with some cafecito. I'm trying to negotiate on this floor that's both red and blue. I'm trying to dance in this swirl, right? So this piece was about that tension. And I think for Hispanic heritage, for all of us, and especially in this very polarized world, all of a sudden, where your parents were born, all of a sudden makes you different somehow, right? It makes you suspect. It makes you question. It makes you allowed to be profiled and stopped in the street. Basically, all of a sudden, there's this whole new lens. Sort of transports me back to those early days when I was in college trying to figure out where I belonged, and definitely to the 60s when my dad was trying to figure out, my God, do I even walk in front of that store looking for a job? And I think as we aspire, what we want to do is make sure that the country that we love, this beautiful experiment started in 1776, continues towards an arc of greatness. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about that during Hispanic heritage. And one way I did that is I painted this plane many years ago, 22 years ago. It's called 21 years ago. It's called the Painted Cuban Plane. And it was a plane that people who wanted freedom, the kind of freedom to not be profiled, to speak without, being questioned, to have your religious views, basically to have the kind of stuff that all of us take for granted is the kind of stuff that's repressed with state police in Cuba. So someone took this airplane and flew it out of a field of Pinar del Rio. This is a Russian crop duster. And he put his family in the plane and they flew across the Florida Straits, landed in the US. The US Marshals confiscated the plane because it was property of the Cuban government. And I decided to paint this dark, ugly plane with these vibrant colors, with mouths, talking about freedom of expression and light and truth. And then I invited people who arrived here at different points since 1959 on these footlockers that surrounded the plane to write messages about what it is that they left behind and what it is that they found when they came to the United States. And that was my way of creating a participatory art project that talked about the Cuban diaspora, but it wasn't just one artist's voice, the painting. It wasn't just a strong concept, the medium, but it was really a platform for community conversations, which is what I was doing in those murals with kids in adult prison, and in Africa, and in Bolivia, and in Panama, and in Cyprus, and in Northern Ireland, and all these other, and in Taiwan, and all these other places where I've done this work. So the idea is that I use art as a platform to express ideas. As an artist, there are things I care about, so my convening is around those issues. And what I wanted to do is sort of pivot here for a second and talk to us a little bit about the kind of issues that impact the zoo. Obviously, everything I talked about impacts a zoo because a zoo is in a community, and members of that community, the staff that work there, the families that visit there need to feel safe and part of a community. So in Hispanic heritage, it's important for me to talk about these issues. But I want to pivot and now talk about other living beings that share those same four nucleotides. I want to talk about conservation and animals. But before I do, Em and Jody, should we stop and pause for a couple of questions before I
Yeah,
next
let's
slide?
see if anybody has any questions. Please let us know. I have I love what everything you're saying. It's so cool because you're including, art and culture and your history, and you're talking about what influenced you and how you got to where you are. And it's just so important when you're mentioning like community and the art is a platform, but it's a way to get people together, and then it's an open conversation, and it's awesome because we do need that, especially in today's world, but always it's about community. When you make the like, so looking at the one up on the screen right now, the plane, how long did that take you? I mean, and then how, and other people there, you said that they were participating, they were coming and they were sharing stories, and then they were putting items inside the trunks.
Yep, letters that they would write. Um, so this plane, I mean, this plane has a big story. So, the plane arrived, it flew into Key West, and then it was taken to pieces and put in trucks and driven here to this location. This is a former Coast Guard hangar right next to City Hall. The reason I was painting it is because a long time ago, um, you may not remember, but some Cuban planes shot down a civilian aircraft in the Florida Straits. And the reason that the Cuban government knew that those civilians aircrafts were flying in the Florida Straits is because one of their spies married a Cuban woman who was involved, with one of the, with this group, this nonprofit group called Hermanos al Rescate, and this group would go through the Florida Straits and see if there were people who were on rafts looking for freedom. And unlike today, where it's like, let's deport them, let's put them in alligator Alcatraz, let's just, make their lives miserable, the idea was to rescue them at sea and to give them community, to give them home. And in one of those searches, the Cuban MiG's planes shot it down. So there was a court case, and this woman sued the Cuban government for defamation because she married a fraud. She married a spy. So the U.S. Marshals confiscated this plane and gave it to her in compensation for the millions that the Cuban government owed her for for this liability. And then her lawyer decided to donate the plane for this event called Cuban Monument to Freedom, Celebra Libertad. And it was a big event that we had. So it took me, I forget now, but it probably took me about a month to paint it. I know we missed a Heat playoffs game just to sit there on a ladder painting this plane. And then it went to this community you probably know before. Wynwood was famous for the Wynwood Walls in Miami. This plane was then moved to a warehouse in Wynwood. And then after that, it was moved to Florida International University. But again, it's one of these process pieces where the community, the first letter was put in by the mayor of Miami, who talked about as a 6-year-old how he left Cuba and he told his story. And I think the important thing about this piece is that it invited people to share their stories, to do storytelling. And once you start doing that, you begin to empathize, because part of what's happening in America today is that there are a lot of narratives, right? There's a lot of narratives where, people spread, what are rumors or false truths, or you decide to scapegoat one person. Some got into a car accident, all of a sudden it was intentional, and now everyone of that ethnicity is running down people, right? It's just gossip and rumor. So instead, if you just humanize it and personalize it and have people that tell you the story of what it was like and what they came here and and you show them pictures like I did of you, then all of a sudden you begin to find that human connection. All of a sudden you begin to understand, oh my God, we're one people. We share the same DNA. We're one herencia, one society. We're all one, right? So that's what I try to do with pieces like this and with pieces of the other murals, where you're creating a platform for communication and understanding and connecting with one another. So yeah, that's what this plane was about. And that's why it has such a long name. It's called the Painted Cuban Plane and Freedom Luggage Installation. And it was about bringing the truth of what's happening in Cuba to light, not through my voice, but through the voices on the letters and all of those Foot Lockers.
Very cool. Thank you. Thanks for elaborating on that because it's really important to hear that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Javier. Now, if anybody else has any questions, please feel free to leave them in the Q&A section or in the meeting chat, and we'll get to them as we go.
Great. So let me go ahead and move on to the next portion, which is a more traditional portion. I'm hoping that a lot of the folks who are listening today are members of the zoo or volunteers or regular visitors of the zoo. So, I kind of wanted to celebrate the conservation efforts and show you a little bit of my own. I've created this platform called Endangered World that allows individuals to have voice in protecting global biodiversity. And it invites people to become what I call eco emissaries, right? To do what I do with my canvas, but for you to do in your life, in your school cafeteria, at your workplace, on the bus, right? Giving you a canvas where you can invite others to also express their opinions about protecting our biodiversity. And why am I doing this? Well, it's clear. Again, I'm sorry. Had I been there, I would know who I'm speaking to, and I wouldn't have to tell you what the sixth mass extinction is. I'm assuming most of you know, but in case some of you don't, we are in the middle of the sixth mass extinction. Literally, the biodiversity of this planet, the richness, the tapestry of life that lives on this planet is in peril. A majority of the species of this planet face extinction by the end of this century. The possibility that only in a zoo will you see a lot of what is in the wilderness today is a reality. And I want that to fall and impact you just for the sake of those animals. But it's also about us, because remember, we're biological beings. So the changes in climate, the destruction of habitat, the creation of conditions where vectors of disease can weaken, hamper species, can destroy habitats and ecosystems, can diminish the kind of protein that we get from our fisheries, can put a virus in the kind of industry where we get a lot of our food, can decimate the monocultures that we harvest to feed ourselves, right? The fragility, the vulnerability of life on this planet is something that does just not impact these species, but it impacts us as well because we share the same biology. And of course, what's driving that is just that, the hunting, the poaching, but also the development and our absurd addiction to fossil fuels, our greed, our consumption, our inability to pivot and use wind energy and solar energy and renewable energies. But instead, we continue to blanket our planet with carbon, giving rise to not just the level of carbon in the atmosphere, but to the heat that melts polar ice caps, raises sea levels, allows our waters to acidify, allows the heat to do regime changes, habitat, destroy the natural processes, and begin to create the kind of catastrophic, almost apocalyptic crisis that is destroying our species. So when 1 million species risk extinction and ecosystems like my beloved Everglades can fall apart, and all of the life-giving ecosystem services are in peril, I, as an artist, have to respond the same way I respond to a Cuban dictatorship or to AIDS or to the violence done to children and their families. So I wanted to create an art piece around that, and that's what Endangered World was. And I wanted to know how we as individuals can recognize that we are all connected, and how I can create a process, a platform that allows them to realize that it's something that impacts them personally, even though the animal may live on the other side of the world, but more importantly, that they have agency. that this person participating in my project has a role, has voice, belongs, has standing, has the ability to opine and to do something about it. You don't need permission from a zoo. You don't need permission from a mayor. You on your own can decide, I want to protect the snow leopard and I'm going to do something about it. It's better if you do it with your zoo. But, on your own, you can make it happen. And that's why I created this project. It started in many ways by me creating these installations. I was invited by the National Science Foundation to go to the South Pole in 2006 and 7 to create a series of installations around climate. And I learned more and more about this desert I was going to, this desert called the South Pole. It is a continent. It sits atop of a continent that's got mountains, and above those mountains, it has 3 kilometers of ice. And then at the top of that is where some scientists are conducting some cool experiments. So I went there and I decided to plant 24 flags, one at every 15 degrees. And when I'm standing at the South Pole, everything around me is north. I'm literally at the bottom of the world, so anywhere I look is north. But at the poles, the degrees converge, right? So you could be in Madrid over here, and you can be in Australia over here, and you just take a step, and you're in that continent, right? In that longitude. So I wanted to conceptually bring animals from every single part of Earth, from every single longitude, from every single time zone, and connect them and bring them to the harshest of places where they can't survive. No one can survive. Nothing lives on the South Pole. There's no mosquitoes, there's no penguins, there's no polar bears, obviously, there's nothing. It's just ice. Nothing lives there other than humans who fly in and fly out of there on planes with skis. So I wanted to bring these animals conceptually to the harshest of places and put them around the circle. So what I did is I wrote their Latin names and the degree where they struggled to survive, and I created this installation. But then in 2008, the New York Foundation for the Arts, as a sponsored artist, gave me the ability to go to the North Pole. And I wanted to make even a bigger statement, because over here I just did 24 animals, and I did the most charismatic of animals. But I realized this is a big problem, and maybe I'm not making the point the way I need to make it. So I wrote the name of 360 animals, one for every degree of our 360 degrees. I worked with biology students and scientists to come up with a diverse group of animals, of insects, of birds, of marine life, mammals, of reptiles. And I created this list looking at the habitat and why it is that these animals were threatened or endangered. And then what I did was something special. I spoke the name of that animal at every degree. I just turned 360 ways and I pointed my hand and spoke the name of the animal. And I did that as a way of calling out to that animal, of saying that I hear you, I understand you, I see that you are struggling, that you're almost at the end. And of course, I did that mostly, not just as a meditation or reflection, but to launch this campaign of having us see how interconnected these animals are. I could walk around that pole in the south, or I could walk around that arrow in the north, and I would be on the longitude of where every one of those animals is. But conceptually, I could also pollute in the streets of Miami and impact a snow leopard in Asia by impacting climate, by warming the glaciers, by melting the mountainside, and by disrupting their ability to hunt. So the same way that we're all connected longitudinally, we're all connected with our actions. So if we can work together to do harm, we can also work together to do unharm. And that's what all of these projects are about, through these eco actions. So I've created a series of projects where individuals adopt an animal, but not the way you normally do, which is you write a check and you get a fluffy animal. Over here, it's a little bit different. Over here, what you do is you decide which animal you care about. And you look at the degree that I've assigned to that animal, and you decide to adopt that animal. by depicting them somehow. Some people depict them on rocks. They just write the number of the degree where they live. And of course, animals live in long ranges. No one lives in just 1 degree. And of course, that animal doesn't live in the entire degree. If you're an African animal, you just live in that portion of the degree in sub-Saharan Africa, right? But the point is that generally, as a way of creating an art project, I assigned a degree to every animal. And then I invited people to do things. So in the upper left, you see a picture of Biscayne National Park. It's an underwater park, a marine park here in Florida. And we created a mile-long installation. 360 people each painted a flag with the animal that they adopted. So 360 animals, 360 flags. And they drew the number of the flag and the animal. But most importantly, they committed to do something in Miami to help that animal across the planet. And we called those things eco actions. There's a series of eco actions that I have been doing to get people to do things locally to protect the animal. And what I really want to do is create a leader. Obviously, I'm trying to save an animal, but what I'm really trying to do is create a conservationist. I'm trying to give you the tools, the platform, the excuse for you to tell someone, oh yeah, that number that you see, that's because I've adopted this animal. And you know that if you do this, this, and this, you can help animals. So maybe you should do that too, right? So that's my purpose as an artist, to create an excuse, a conspicuous thing that makes you curious and ask and engage you in a conversation about something you would otherwise not talk about. And the reason I do that is because in the bottom set of rows, I'm in the Netherlands, and over here there's a culture, the Beaker people culture. We don't know much about them except that they created these beakers that look like funnels. But they use the same sort of stones that you see at Stonehenge to create these grave sites, and they would bury their dead under these huge stones that were left scattered across the Netherlands after the last little ice age. So I decided to create my own sort of hunebed or burial site. And I put all these stones. Obviously, I had smaller stones because I can't carry big stones. So I put all these stones and I created like this wall. But the doorway to that wall was made up of bricks. And the concept behind it was that if one brick falls, it's okay, you'll replace the other brick, but that portal stays shut and no one goes into the graveyard. But if a bunch of bricks start falling down all at once, then the entire wall of bricks comes crumbling down. And that is the danger that we're facing as a society. That with the sixth mass extinction, we are opening this portal to our death, to our demise, to having heat beyond living conditions in parts of the world, of having drought where you can't grow your crops, of having extreme weather that makes spaces unhabitable and destroy economies, right? So the purpose of this is to show that it's not just endangered animals, but it's an entire world that's endangered, and we have a responsibility. And if we could focus on helping animals, then we also, in the process, help ourselves. So these adopted species projects, I had people just draw their own little rocks as if they were building a wall out of stones, right? So it was like this conceptual quantum, physics type of rock. So all over Miami, you had these people, these little rocks that had a number on them, and that number represented a different animal. And you would put it like next to your nightstand or just wherever you wanted, so that every time you saw that rock, you remember what it is you promised to do to protect that animal. And that's the Endangered World Project. So you guys could do that too. You say, I promise that I'm going to do this eco action to lower my carbon footprint, or to advocate for this animal, or to raise money for its habitat. Right? I'm going to do this thing to protect this animal that I adopted, like my dog. I feed my dog every day. Well, I'm going to do something every day for this animal because I've adopted this animal. And then that little art piece is your way of knowing that you're part of something bigger. You're doing it the way everyone else is doing it. And it reminds you to do it as well. But importantly, when abuelita comes and goes, mijo, ¿qué hace esa piedra ahí sobre tu escritorio que tiene esa piedra con número 15? You can respond, oh, grandma, that number 15 is because it's 15 degrees longitude, and that's an animal that I've adopted. And all of a sudden, you become that eco-emissary. So we did this project in various places. These are some of the eco actions that we ask people to do. Obviously, you can make your own eco actions, but any and every one of these things have an impact and can help animals thrive. It allows you to begin to think of things that you can personally do to help protect animals. And just at the Peabody Essex Museum last year, we added another level to the campaign. It wasn't just painting the animal's name on a rock, right? That's a simple way of doing it. Super easy. You can do it with a magic marker. You can take a pebble. You can put it on anything. You just put that on your desk, on your nightstand, on your locker at school, carry it in your pocket, whatever. It's just a conversation starter. It's a paperweight, whatever you want it to be. But the other thing we did is I created these silk screens so that people could put it on a piece of clothes that was torn or old or stained and they were going to throw away. That instead of throwing it away and having to buy another piece of garment from Vietnam that was shipped across the ocean just so you have something new and crispy, crisp to look at, you instead had your old tired garment, but in it, almost like a scarlet letter, a source of pride, you would have the animal that you're wearing that for. So it was my way of repurposing clothing so that you wouldn't just throw it away and you wouldn't be embarrassed about wearing it. And again, it's a conversation starter. That person who's using that fast, clothing where you just fast fashion, where you buy a dress and then get rid of it the next day because it was cheap, and then you buy a next one for the next day. It was my way of sort of slowing that down and having you care for the environment by changing your behaviors, but also being a leader. I'm ending with this slide. This is the piece I did for Bat Conservation International. We were very happy that through advocacy, we're able to persuade our county commission not to destroy a small swath of pine rockland next to our local zoo when they wanted to destroy it to expand development in this very special site of the extinct pine rocklands where the this particular species of bat lives. And what I'm looking at here, if you look at these pictures, it is a picture of Miami-Dade County, and the yellow and orange lines show the range of what that forest used to be, the pine rockland, in the past. But all that remains of that pine rockland in this swath of Miami-Dade County are the light blue sections. So orange was what we used to have for these bats to be able to live, and all they have now is a little blue area. So that's why this bat is almost disappearing as a ghost. But the Florida bonneted bat is coming back because people, through their advocacy, through their eco actions, through their work, can and will help protect them, and in so doing protect us. And with that, I want to wish you all a very, very happy mes de la celebración de nuestra hispanidad. And thank you for helping preserve not just the 4 nucleotides that make up the DNA that code the proteins to make this bat fly, but also to make all of us thrive in this beautiful, wonderful nation of ours that we call home. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Javier. Now, I certainly wanted to chime in a couple of times here because a lot of the things you certainly said certainly spoke to me as a Latino, having growing up in the United States and everything. So I thank you so very much, and I'm sure a lot of other Latinos that grew up, Latino in the United States, hearing us today have certainly felt a lot of the words that you have said today, and I appreciate you very much for that, especially the vulnerability parts that it takes to present such a topic and everything. So I genuinely really, really appreciate that so very much of you. There was someone who wanted your contact information at the end of the meeting, so feel free to take it from this slide, Kinsler.
Yep.
Hi.
So Adam Roberti is the executive director of my foundation. He's been working with me for 6 years now. He helps do all of the stuff we do, including our Science Art Academy and the Endangered World Project and all that. So you can reach him there. You can learn more about our work in the foundation's website. Obviously, everyone knows how to Google these days, so you can just Google me and Endangered World, and you can also see a bunch of information about me. But if you want to get a hold of us, Adam's the best way to do that.
Fantastic, and we appreciate that so very much. Likewise, we also open it right now We got a couple minutes for some questions and discussion from anybody in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself or type it in the chat. We'd love to hear from some of y'all. I know Janae's probably have the question. But I certainly have questions.
I only have 100.
So yeah, I can start us off. I definitely have one, a very small one. It could be small if you want, Javier.
Do you want to get rid of the slide so we can? Did everyone get the picture? Everyone, just give them enough time. But after a while, get rid of the slide so I can see the faces.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah. If some of y'all want to show some faces and everything, I can really quick stop the
Yeah.
share really quick.
What
There
if
you
just type Adam's address on the chat room in case anyone?
Oh
didn't
yeah.
get it? Or
Yeah.
cortadafoundation.org. All the information is there. So if anyone wants to get a hold of us, just cortadafoundation.org. But look, I can see you all now. Hi everyone.
Hello, a bunch of you all. Thank you. I'll share the final slides in just a second. But we can address any questions right here. Certainly, I have one myself. It could be a short answer, or however how much when you want to put into it, no problem. But if certainly there might be someone in here today or in the recording that looks up to you in a certain way. What is or at least identifies themselves with you. What is a piece of advice you'd give to that individual to be their best self?
I think it's to be genuine at the end of the day, right? I think that's especially for artists, right? That there are it's hard in a world where you want to to be accepted and loved, right? But you can't not be who you are. So I am a gay man. I am a Latino man. I am the son of Cuban immigrants. I was born in the United States, but I'm the son of immigrants, and I don't try to hide any of that, right? I know what I believe in, so the art I make is about those things. So I think in the same way, us in society, if you just are true to yourself and understand that you um, live in the context of others. In other words, instead of looking inward, you look outwardly, and you are true about who you are, then it becomes easier for you to navigate, to keep your eyes open, to sort of see what opportunities exist. And as long as you do that, that you have this openness to experience, then I think it'll be fine. So again, just look at my trajectory, and I'll try to make this small because I want other questions to come in. But it's because I saw what my parents did. It's because I did not shy away from the violence in school. It's because I decided I was going to solve the problem, not throw my hands up in the air and say, oh my God, this is too big for me to do. It's because I decided to take risks, to advance it, because it was things I cared about. Then I was okay with, not getting all the rewards, just knowing that I was doing a little bit to do better. Right here, I am trying to help us with climate. I'm in a nation that has basically disavowed climate, but instead of throwing my hands up in the air, you see me here speaking to a handful of you about the importance of stopping our pollution of carbon in the environment. So if you feel, if you believe and you're passionate, then your life purpose will define your way and define what you do. So I think it's living a life that way. I think it'll give you purpose, a sense of and a sense of accomplishment at the end of the day. And for me, I create things like my foundation so that whatever lessons I've learned along the way can then be shared with others through time. So that's the other part of it too.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Being genuine, y'all.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any views?
I just want to say I
Yeah.
love the message how we're all connected, because I feel like sometimes people think, oh, that's happening all the way on the other side of the globe, or what does that matter to me, or I'm just one person, how it doesn't matter what I do. I think there's too much of that, and I love your messaging that, even if it's just conversation starters and we all are in charge of our own person and what we can do together, we can, as a community, as a group, we can change things. And it's so awesome that you're able to use your art as a platform to get those talks started.
Thanks, Jody, for noticing those two very important things. That's it. That's all it's about. One, we're all connected. So all our actions and our inactions impact. We're all connected. But two, you have voice. So we're all connected. So if there's a problem, it's personal to you. So you have a reason to respond. but you're not a victim. You have voice, you have the ability to do it. And I think what art does, art allows us to see things differently, to reframe things. So if society is pointing it in this way, you reframe it. If it's far away on the other side of the world, you create an art piece to show, no, it's just a footstep away. It's really not that far, right? Like we're all in this one thing. So I think that that's what culture and arts allow us to do. And in so many ways, as we celebrate Hispanic heritage, that's what these great muralists and these great dancers and all these other cultural forms that allow us to express our love in our community keep that glue and inspire us and advance us as a society. So that's the beauty, and that's why I'm so happy you invited me to talk here. I see children in the room. If they want to ask any questions, I'm happy to answer that.
Yeah, I don't really have a question, but I really I really liked how you kind of talked about how like studying, because I feel like starting off is one of the most difficult things about trying to cause change. Many people don't really cause change, or don't know how to because they don't know how to start. Maybe they feel like they can't do anything. So, do you have any tips on how you would how you can start off even if it's starting small?
Yeah, how old are you?
I'm 16 years old.
Okay. As a 16-year-old, every one of us adults, every single one of us adults wants nothing but success for you, right? Like I am your age in reverse. I'm 61. You're 16. So everyone knows who I am and what I'm going to do. Like there's no surprise who Xavier Cortada would be at age 63. But I'm not sure who you're going to be at age 18, right? Like there's a whole world that can change in 2 years for you. So guess what? I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that those next 2 years for you are good so that you can become a better version of yourself. And I don't know who you're going to become. So I'm curious about your future, right? Are you going to be the next, nuclear scientist? Are you going to be my mayor? Right? So any idea you have, I as an old person want to make sure that I help you get there because I'm old enough to realize that my entire life was about making my world better. And guess what? The only way that world gets better is if all the 16-year-olds have a better world, right? That's what makes a better world. That's how we define it, right? So I think what I want you to understand is the power you have as a 16-year-old. Everyone wants you to succeed, and everyone wants to invest with you because right now you're an unknown. So all these adults, all these teachers, all these parents, all these communities are willing to listen to you when you say, hey, help me protect this creek down the street because it's got these frogs and these frogs are getting poisoned because of all this fertilizer that's putting algae, and the algae is creating algal blooms and all the water is coming out of this, and we need to save the frogs. I promise they'll listen to you before they listen to me. So if you understand that you have that power, right, that agency, then all of a sudden you're going to get a little success. So I would start with something that's connected to you that you feel passionately about. And if you win that struggle with the frogs or the butterflies, then you personally are going to prove to yourself, oh my God, I succeeded. Then you're going to think of yourself as a leader. So the 17-year-old version of yourself is going to do something bigger with more people. And all of a sudden you're going to become a leader and people are going to start listening to you. And that's what I'm trying to create here, a pathway for you. And the beautiful thing about art is that if you create a process, a dance on the stream, some flags on the stream, some murals, something on social media, just something that you create that make other people take notice, they're going to do it if they see an art piece as opposed to you, trying to like send letters to the editor, right? Like it'll be something extra that you do. That creativity, if you do it in a way where you invite them to be part of the solution, then they'll even participate more, right? And that's what I do with my projects, right? I do something, but you're part of it. But it's not just you, it's 359 others. Oh my God, and it's a mile long. And oh my God, it's at a park. And look at all this media, and Discovery Channel is here. Oh my God, what are we doing? So that's what I want you to do. So basically, believe in yourself and understand that although you're 16, I promise you the entire world wants you to succeed. So they're going to help you, right? And then you are going to believe in yourself when you see that you do this, and you'll become a leader. The reason I'm successful today is because in high school, I wanted to do something to help my community, and people believed in me enough to allow me to do it. And then my friends in high school followed me, and now I became a leader in high school. Then I was accepted at a university, and I did at a university, and they believed in me. So then I created a drug rehab center at university. And it's like, oh my God, this kid's in law school and he's running a drug rehab center. This guy must be cool. And then they made me the chair of the Youth Gang Task Force, where I met a professor of psychiatry who invited me to be a professor. You see how that works? And it's all
Yes.
because in high school, as a 16-year-old, I decided to do good because people believed in me the same way that I believe in you.
Thanks so much for your advice. And I just found it really interesting that you used as a way to like help conservation's very different from what I know about conservation. I mainly know about like advocates and
Yeah.
a lot of
Look,
things.
I think here's a good news for you in case you don't know how to use art. Uh, Everyone is an artist. Each of us create a pathway, a life. When you get up in the morning, you decide what kind of life you're going to create for yourself. And I guess what I want you to do is just be creative. Just be creative, think differently. And if you do that, it could take the form of a dance or a sculpture, but it could also just be your own creative problem solving. Okay, so I'm not, if you're down to do data collection and be a scientist, please don't go away from that because we need a bunch of scientists. But if you want to add art to the equation, do that too.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Javier, and thank you so much, Kinsler, for your question and everything. We always appreciate the dialogue that you, especially the dialogue that you two specifically brought up. So thank you so very much and everything.
You can't hang up unless I have another student speak because I see another, oh, I see a mom, even better. Okay, hello, mom.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Hi, sorry, it took me a little while to unmute. So this is Danny. She's 10 years old, and she has a couple of questions that she's a little shy to ask. So I told her I'd help her
Impossible.
out.
How can you be shy? I'm a cool guy. I'm nice. I'm good.
Okay, mi amor. So she had a question that she really, really loves science and she really, really loves art.
Mhm.
And it feels hard sometimes to combine them both. And so she'd love to hear ideas around combining science and art.
Sure. So your name is Fanny?
Danny. Yeah, Daniela.
Hey, Danny, Xavier, good to see you. Hey, Danny, so I work a lot with scientists all the time. And let me tell you why it's easy for scientists and artists, right? So what artists do is we create things, we imagine things that aren't there, and we bring them to life. We create something that doesn't exist. Scientists do something similar. Scientists try to discover things that are unknown, right? So we both spend our time trying to create new things, knowledge, let's call it, a new painting, a new theory. And the only reason we do that is to help humanity advance, to help us think better. If you think about it, in many ways, a scientist helps us understand, well, how does this natural system work? How does this planet do what it does? You know, how does energy work, right? They're discovering things, they have experiments. Well, artists are also trying to explain who we are as people. What does it mean to be a human? Like we have questions that we try to answer with our art. So whenever artists and scientists come together, they both are standing on the shoulders of what other scientists and other artists did before. And they're just trying to advance that forward. So it becomes a really easy way of two disciplines working side by side. But the beautiful thing is when they work together. These are doing similar things, but when they work together, it's awesome. And in this case, what you see is where scientists can think more creatively, like I was explaining earlier, by visualizing the data that they're collecting through art, right? You could hear it if that data becomes music, or you can see it if that data becomes some sort of visual expression. So all of a sudden, the scientific brain is looking at the same things through a different perspective. And then when you communicate it through art, it allows you to think differently. And I know I'm speaking in really weird, abstract ways, but just know this, that in many ways, you can see how a scientist could inspire an artist to paint a painting about an animal they're studying. Well, the same way an artist can inspire a scientist to think differently on how to study that animal. And when both of those come together, you create something called science art. And a lot of my work, have your mom go to my website and shows you me working with physicists, with population geneticists, with botanists on the use of art to advance or communicate, in some cases, the science. Danny, I know that was very, very adult speak, but maybe your mom can translate that a little bit for you.
Thank you so much. And she's the kid who's reading like all the grown-up books already. So
Okay,
she can probably explain some of the things you said to me.
I read Jurassic Park.
Have your mom take you to my website. There's a place, a project I did at CERN. It's where they discovered the Higgs boson in Geneva. They call it the God particle. And in there, there's a lot of conversations and videos, including a video where a physicist and I are doing a TED Talk about your question. Okay, so just, I think the easiest way of getting there is if you go to cortada.com and you click on about the artist, there might be a link there, or just type the word CERN, 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 or just Google CERN and Cortada. There's a TED Talk, and you'll see me talk about that, and you'll see how artist and scientist work together. That's me with a theoretical physicist having a conversation. But just like that, I've done a lot of work with scientists all over the world. But I guess you're old enough to read that for her. Read that, and please tell your mom what you learned.
We dropped the link for that website as well on the chat if you'd like to further explore that website a little more and everything. Now we've been having such a beautiful conversation here, but I hate to cut it shorter because we're past our time over here and everything. So I am very, very sorry because I really love this conversation and everything like that. So I'm bringing back these slides here together just to close out our day. We can hang out towards the end, but just let me really quick go through my last couple slides here while I thank you so much, Javier, for joining us and everything. And I thank you so much, the participants as well, for joining us as well, especially the question askers, because I really, really appreciate these conversations coming through and everything. I appreciate you all so very much in that. If you liked our celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, we're celebrating the rest of September and the first 2 weeks of October. There's reasons for that. Definitely look it up. Very interesting. Because Hispanic Heritage Month is divided between September and October. So we'll be celebrating for the next couple Wednesdays as well. I hope to see you all there. It's at 5:30. Sorry about the little thing there. It's at 5:30. If you like our celebrations as well, we will be continuing our celebrations in November with Native American Heritage Month, 5:30s every Wednesday as well. Love, love, love to see you all there. Please make it out. If you found yourself rethinking some of the very awesome things that Javier shared today, please feel free to check out the recording. They'll be up on the website very, very soon. Likewise, you can use that to check out all of our previous celebrations as well. Got to thank the donors really quick because they make our programs free. Thank you, donors. Without further ado, thank you all so very much for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody.